Awesome, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of It Is What It Is podcast. I am your host, Cody Kelly. As you can see, I am on location. I won't tell you where I'm at because I'm traveling, but, I try to stay as mobile as possible. But still, we wanted to get this content for you. If you want to keep seeing amazing content, you got to do two things. Connect with me on Instagram at CBMK33 and subscribe to the YouTube page. That's not the correct banner, but this is YouTube at CB_K. Where all amazing content is seen, heard, and felt. I have back with me an amazing guest, Peter Anderson. We're going to really discuss the evolving nature of love and focus on commitment. I'm seeing a lot of just things, I feel like every time I turn on the TV, Peter, and this is an honest confession, my wife loves these shows, Married at First Sight, 90 Day Fiance, Put a Ring on. I feel like any show that is in that vein,
I actually haven't seen it.
Okay. And I just feel like, it's entertaining. It makes me laugh. But good. I feel like what's missing is there's no real, to me, seriousness of it. I feel like that's what's missing. So with that being said, I asked Peter to be back on it. This is his lane, his expertise. I'm not a subject matter professional. I just host this podcast. So with that being said, Peter, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, this is kind of what I do all day long. So I feel like I'm just, but I won't bill you. No.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Right, yeah, so,
I appreciate it because
I was talk about it the whole time.
We could afford you if we could. I appreciate it.
We do need to get into debate, though, that LeBron's not Jordan. So maybe after the show, Cody and I, we have a friendly dialogue every few months. I'll pick on you and say Jordan's still number one in my eyes, but you say LeBron.
Hey, look, I told Chris Broussard that LeBron was better than Mike, and Space Jam 2 was better than Space Jam 1. So. You're good.
I haven't seen the second Space. Yeah, everyone that. So
you should watch this. Oscar worthy.
It's Oscar. I'll have to remember that. Yeah. I mean, it's not like it doesn't have a lot to compare to. So it's not like Space Jam 1 was Shawshank Redemption or,
right.
Godfather or something.
Right. Or just Dude, Where's My Car? I mean, it wasn't that good. It was very limited, just had a lot of people in it.
Right, it was. Yeah, right. Don't expect more. Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
Well, with that being said, Peter, so what this is your niche, this is your occupation. Why does it seem like the seriousness of love is gone? And what I mean by that, I feel like it's almost been reduced or redacted down to like a job. Well, I worked here. For 3 years, I did this project, initiated this plan, had a lot of success, and then wanted to seek a deeper challenge. I feel like now love is really in that talk track. What's going on here?
That's a great question. I think, love, a lot of people don't realize this, but I think you have a lot of evidence to break this up which is love is a verb more than just as much as it is a noun, and when you think of the two characteristics that really make any relationship work, and not just marriage, even friendship, it has to be built on knowing each other's world. And then after that, it has to be built on being able to pick up each other's bids for connection. So a bid for connection is as simple as, hey, did you see my text? And your partner turns toward it. And then being able to have conflict in a way that's honoring to one another. But what holds that house together, if I could put it like that, is you have trust on one side and then you have commitment on the other. And if you don't have commitment and trust, it's going to be very difficult to see a relationship that's going to be built on anything that's going to be substantial. And so I would say that's a great question, because I think those are two of the things that are often missing in relationships. And I would say the difference between the two is that, commitment, trust, I would say, is something that you feel. I can't, and sometimes trust can be affiliated with your past. Sometimes people have hard times trusting just because they grew up in a particular environment. Commitment, though, is something that you do. I would say it's something that I remember one therapist put it like this. I think it was Lisa Lund. She's a Gottman certified therapist, and she said that commitment is taking your partner with you wherever you go. And I really love that definition because it's the notion that commitment is governed by it's not just governed by some kind of legal contract. It's really a partnership in the journey. And so to answer that question, I think a lot of people may be missing that. It's, I think they want to compartmentalize, leave their partner over there, and then just kind of like live their own life. And that's not really a committed relationship. It doesn't matter where you are. Do you metaphorically take your partner with you? Maybe they're not even physically there with you, but when I walk in this room, my partner's here with me, and I think if you're missing that, it's going to be difficult to move forward. Yeah.
I think that's fair. I've never heard that that difference, that differentiating marker between commitment and trust. That trust really is a feeling, and commitment is an actual placement.
Yeah.
That I think is a definitely nuance, because I always thought that they went hand in hand. If you were committed, it's because you were trustful or you had trust in the relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe it's you can be committed, but because the feeling isn't there, like trust, because it's an emotional trigger. The commitment isn't as strong, or maybe it's just not as pronounced, or maybe you can trust somebody, but because you've compartmentalized your relationship, all of a sudden there's I would say somebody's, I won't say being disingenuous, but it's like there's just a disconnect, right? Like,
yeah,
what? And I don't think it's as simple as error or sin or some
right.
like moral disposition. I don't think it's always that simple, right? Like I, for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's just because programming or whatever, commitment as a whole is fluid now, right? And I think it's because and I started it off with the job comparison. I think because when you have a lapse of institutional trust, somehow we mirror what we see, right? Like society isn't just what you see on CNN, MSNBC, Fox.
Right.
That gets replicated in the home too.
Thank God. Yeah. So, yeah. That's a good. Yeah. And well, I guess I make that distinction too, because I've had couples that I'm thinking of one, and she had huge amount of commitment, but she didn't trust him. He really trusted her, but he wasn't necessarily committed in the relationship, which is really interesting. In other words, he never thought that she would like leave him for another guy.
Right.
She was never going to leave him, but she didn't trust him, which is really interesting. So it was kind of, it was a very, in the very beginning, it's often why they're seeing me. I mean, in a sense, they're kind of keeping one another, together. But, often when you have those types of relationships, especially if she's very committed to the relationship, but if you ask her, do you trust what he's doing behind your back? She says, absolutely not. So that's what's kind of, it's interesting that relationships can be built on one or the other, but they're not going to last very long, that way. And, well, I should say this, I guess I take that back. There are relationships that do last for a long time. Maybe I shouldn't say they're happy relationships. There's a lot of suspicion. She's maybe always jealous of him, sometimes rightfully so. But he's like, has one foot out the door, one foot in the house, and that suspicion that she has of him kind of, encourages him, I guess, to put one foot out the door. And as he put one foot out the door, she feels pretty, even though she doesn't trust him, because he has one foot out the door, she still feels like she has to keep the relationship together. And I think that definitely happens when there are kids involved, but it could be a very exhausting relationship in that way. But I mean, I would say that, I often ask couples, I mean, do you trust one another? And they would often give very different answers, than are you committed to one another? And most people that come and see me, they've got some type of commitment. They want to, they want to build that trust again. But yeah, it can be hard. It can be hard to build that trust, especially if you feel like commitment is on shaky ground, and vice versa. Yeah.
Are we thinking too small about commitment? And what I mean by that, like the average layperson, we think of it as faithful, not faithful.
Yeah, sure.
But can you be like, are you committed to the journey? Something that I've been thinking of is at what point do you settle, right? Like, and what I mean by that, like, I think every strong relationship has to have a process, or that both parties have to come to a point that there's a dying of something else. Like there's a settlement. Sometimes we see, we heard that settle word, and it's like it's taboo, like, don't settle, or it's, you're not getting what you should get. But the reality is, you can push growth too much, right? To the point that you grow, and you might grow past, or you might grow from, or you might, like, growth can be toxic at times. Growth can be cancerous, right? Like, does in order for this evolution of commitment, does it have to be this stripping away process?
Yeah, I mean, when you say growth can be cancerous, what are you referring to, in a marriage or in a relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as a millennial, so the millennial generation was taught to go big, right? Like everything has to be more. It's where our parents was like, if you got a degree, you made it. Now it's like, you need 2 or 3 by 33. And, like now it's like everything's on steroids. Everything is more, it's bigger, stronger, faster, right?
Right.
So with that, it seeps in, and you start thinking like, no, you're doing this, you're doing this. And it's crazy. I was having a conversation with my friends. I said, when our parents got to our age, they actually looked our age. And it's no shot at anybody, but it's like now, you get into your 30s and 40s, it's a different 30 and 40-year-old demographic. It's not what our parents, our parents was 30, 40, sweatpants, bear sweater, the sweater, the Chicago Bears logo, or your favorite football team. And that was life. And life was kind of just, came to a summation. They had their job they were going to be at for 15, 20 years. They were married, they had the kids, and then the next step was, retirement and that, but now it's like, no, we're going to start up this company, we're going to do this. It's like, it's all these added layers to the point. And I'm wondering, how do you keep surviving in this growth mode? Because it's a very selfish. It's cool, but it's a little selfish, right? So how do we handle growth?
Yeah, you bring up a really good question. And I think there's, I think every religion in the world, whether it's, I'm a Christian, but I mean, I read up on a lot of religions. Buddhism in particular talks about, grasping for, the main reason for suffering is because people grab hold on things. I think you could look at that without being a Buddhist and say there's a lot of truth in that a lot of suffering when you just hold on to stuff so tightly. And I see that in my couples. I see that in my own life, that I think we lack mindfulness. I think we're so focused on the future and on the past. Nostalgia is probably one of the most interesting, but also deadliest emotions that I often see in my office, because people will try to relive it, some kind of memory, and then they try to exceed some type of moment in the future, some utopia. And they're striving for that, and they never attain it, and there's never enough. And I do think that the heart is constantly wanting more and more and more. And that's really what feeds our addictions. And addiction is a lot of people think addiction is just by taking alcohol or taking drugs or addicted to sex. And it's actually not. We could be addicted to our thoughts. We could be addicted to this, this desire and craving of wanting more and more and more. And in the context of a relationship, you're right. It can be toxic because you're not present with your partner. You're present on the next thought. And so when your partner just says, hey, hey, Cody, look at what I got. Or hey, Peter, look what I got. I'm like, you're so focused, it's so easy to be focused on something that's not in the reality, which in the here and now is your partner trying to bid for some type of connection with you. And then we miss out on what's actually going on with that. And then next thing we know, those people are gone, and one of the saddest, one of my, I don't know if this is a diversion or not, but I don't know if you remember that song, Cat's Cradle, Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, Little Boy Blue, Man in the Moon. I mean, basically the whole song is about a dad always wanting more and more and more in his song career. And he misses his son's childhood. And then when his son is finally grown up, the dad wants a relationship with the son. And the son basically says, sorry, Dad, I'm doing a show, don't have time for you. And the author of that song, I forgot who wrote it, but he died. He was actually a biography of his own life, and he died literally either a few months or a few weeks after he wrote that song, and maybe a few years, I can't remember. But he never actually reconciled, And so that's a huge reality in what you're saying. We could just crave and crave and crave, and not really just be still with the present moment on this beautiful person that's in our lives, this intimate partner that's in our lives. And man, we're missing out, I'm not saying not to strive. I think it's great to strive. I think you and I, we want more, but there's a difference between wanting more versus being content and just saying, okay, this is enough for the day, and being present with my partner, and those are happy marriages where he could, or she could just, no, kids go to bed, job goes to bed, I'm here for you, and it sounds really simple, but I would say most couples don't do that, just that by itself. And we're really unhappy in the process.
Flush out nostalgia. So you brought up nostalgia, and I'm wondering, do you mean that we have a hard time letting go of the past, or we're trying to, or aging?
I think a little both. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, I think we definitely have a hard time aging, and I multiple reasons why that might be. I think we fear getting old. I think our culture often fears that, which is really interesting because every religion in the world, if I could keep bring up a lot of religion here, I guess, because I got to put my MDiv to use in some capacity. Other than get to, no, but every religion looks at aging as an honor, as God's blessing on this person. As Proverbs says, the gray hairs is the sign of God preserving your life, and we are ashamed of our gray hair. But I think nostalgia just being just a longing for lost memories, longing for a past, and I think the older we get, we could really be stuck with nostalgia, especially if there's a lot of regret, or there's a lot of, man, I wish I would have done things differently. Or, and I see this sometimes in relationships. I wish I would have married a different person. I married him too young. And I wish I had, followed my dreams. And it's okay to look back, it's okay to look back and say, gosh, what could I have learned? But once you get caught up in that shame cycle, get caught up in just like, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that differently. It really can be a toxic antidote or thing to the relationship, because then you start living in regret. And then when you start living in regret, you get caught up in this kind of, I almost regret being with you. And then I think in that case, in the context of a relationship, you're craving more and more and more for something that's just maybe not the person that's in your life. So nostalgia is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we're called to reflect. As long as it's reflecting on, what I can learn from my past, hopefully we're always doing that. But to just sit at a place of regret, or sit at a place of like wanting to relive it, in a way that it can never be relived, then I think that can, that could, in the context of a relationship, it's going to hijack your brain from the present moment.
That's good. I think that, like you said, the process of shame, or dealing with unnurtured potential, right? Unnurtured potential. I think there's something that is intrinsic, and I don't know if it's just society places it there, but it's like the vision that you have for your life. If you're not there yet, you deal with this false sense of failure, and it's not true. But it's like, but you can see yourself doing something else, and the vision becomes stronger than the reality of something, right? And I think you have to have that dialogue, that internal dialogue, like, no, I really do have a great life. I have been blessed to do whatever. I don't need this internal driver that just wants me to seek more at all expense. And I think what's happening is because everything is, I feel like the antithesis of truth is what we're dealing with,
Right.
Whether, and however, and it's just extremism to the point that you have one side that's way over here, another side that's way over here, and it's like you now have to pick, right? And instead of saying I'm cool right here in the middle, I have to be, I gotta be this entrepreneur, CEO that started the next hybrid between Twitter, Google, and Amazon, or else I won't feel happy because I can't go to space. And the reality is, like, I don't have to go to space. Space is cool. I want to go to space, but the drive for space over the drive for substance, I think that's toxic.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that's in context of relationships too, on what because it's, I guess a lot of it is also, I should back up here a little bit. If you're looking at a relationships because you're somehow unsatisfied with a part of you, and there's not a sense of self-acceptance, and there's not a healthy sense of self-love or a healthy sense of self-assurance, and you're craving, you're wanting this partner to somehow fulfill things about yourself that you're ashamed of,
right.
Then, man, that's going to be messy in a few years, because you got to deal with that. Like she can't do that for you. She can't do that for me. She just can't, as much as she tries. It's just like, and it really is some internal work that we have to do to make these relationships work as well. And that's not easy. And if that, I would always ask the reflective question: why is that so important to you? Is it because you love the work? I think if you love the work, great. But is it, or do you love something? Do you love it because you love it? I guess I should say. Sure. Or do you love the reputation on what was expected of you? Well, then you're not really loving the work. You're loving the expectation, which isn't necessarily you still. It's still, you're kind of doing it for somebody else. A lot of people don't ask those basic questions, just like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why did God put me on this world? Why am I here? It's funny you say that, because it's great. It's a really interesting point, because if you're, and I think this is the, I don't want to say, if you're getting married to fulfill a lot of those without ever asking them, I think eventually those questions are going to catch up with you, whether it's midlife crisis, which I've seen, and those couples often completely dissipate and they separate the minute the kids are out of the house, because it's the kids that are actually keeping the relationship together. And the only thing, and that's not that, you just can't keep a relationship together with just kids. And that's why what you'll often see is that when the kids leave, they're bye-bye, and it either happens with you there, or it's going to happen a little bit later, or maybe even sooner. And the longer you wait, the more bitter you become. The more bitter you become, you actually take away your own life in the process, because contempt, which is the number one reason why people divorce, actually it's the very thing that can take your heart away. I mean, actually, you could lower your life levels by 15 years if you have a lot of contempt in your relationship. So going back on everything you're saying, is so important that you ask these questions, because for the right reasons. Because if you don't, and you're trying to get a relationship to fulfill these needs, oh yeah, it's going to catch up on you. And I don't know if this generation is quite prepared for that, because we're rushed toward the facade, and we're rushed toward the immediacy of mob mentality, and we're rushed toward the immediate of the dopamine effect of, oh my gosh, what's this, and oh my gosh, what's that, and that we haven't really just taken the time necessary to look inward. And that's and I think it's going to catch up on us, without sounding too negative. I think it already is. Yeah. So going back on your very first thing, what's going on? Maybe that's there. There's some linkage to that. Yeah,
I think it's called us. I know we run out of time. I got one more question for you, and then you can tell everybody where to connect with you. But why? How come society hasn't prioritized mental health? And I think this is an aspect of mental health, because I think mental health, is so nuanced. I think whether it's the spiritual aspect of it, the faith, having that faith. I'm a believer as well. But everything that kind of encompasses all of that, right? Like before any decisions are made, before you go start that business, before you say I do, there should be some type of passage or or just something that says like, hold on, let's slow down and let's think about this, because it's not that you're a bad person, it's just that you need to slow down. Why haven't we prioritized process?
It's just mental health in general. Yeah. Well, in some ways I think we have, in an optimistic sense. I mean, I see a therapist. I would never have said that probably publicly so unashamedly even 10 years ago, and I don't mind saying that. I'm a therapist. I see a therapist, So, and I think a lot of people the shame is no longer quite as much as it was even when I was growing up. I'm 44, and I'm Gen Z, so I'm a little older, but I mean, I think my parents' generation, there's a huge stigma that you just didn't do something right. I think when it comes to therapy, though, I think the scariest thing is to be truly known. And I do. I think so. When you're entering into the office of somebody, you're letting go of a lot of your guard, and you willingly are doing it because you see something, that there's something incomplete in your own life that you're wanting help with. And that's not easy, and I would say a lot of people are very guarded because they have been burned. They have been hurt, especially in the church, at times. I mean, I see that a lot. The church doesn't always do a very good job with grief, for example, when there's loss, when there's death, when there's divorce, or when there's an affair, where, we just make really, really quick judgments. I mean, we're getting better. I think churches are getting a whole lot better than we were, again, 5-10 years ago. I think it's just looking at my own life. I mean, I think it's just easier for me to distract myself with work and easier to distract myself with busyness than just sitting down with my own therapist and just opening up all my heart and all my vulnerabilities. I would rather not do that. And but it's a wonderful thing if you can do it, because I think it makes you better. I think also, I would say too, we have a real problem with failure. I love failure. I don't think that's a bad word. I think it's a wonderful word. And it's taken me a while to really love that part of what I've, in my own life. And failure is just a way to do it again and again and again. And I see that with the disciplines that I do. And I have a lot of things that I do for, in my own discipline, whether it's piano, whether it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I love that. I mean, I do that. And whether it's running, I love to run, and all of those things that I do, I get my butt kicked all the time. And yet I'm better and better and better in the process. Right. And it's not a curse word to me anymore. And it's just like, I think people are very cautious with that word. Like there's something wrong with me. No, this is just part of life. So you messed up on a relationship, okay. So you raised your voice with your wife. Okay. Yeah. Join the crowd. Okay. So you got defensive with the guy. So let's talk about the why. Let's talk about what caused that. Let's talk about, some of the deeper issues there, and it doesn't mean that you have to be judged. You could be fully vulnerable and grow at the same time. And that's a possibility I think a lot of people just don't realize is available. And it is. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, look, I appreciate this. Peter, man, this has been helpful. I'm sure the audience got something out of it. Where can they connect with you, man?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because now I'm starting to do John Gottman conferences, which he's the number one, the thing I like about John Gottman is that he is still alive, he and his wife. There's no opinion. It's all research on what makes relationships work and why they fail. And I am doing conferences online. I'm trying to do that at least once a month at Anderson FAM, like family, FAM therapy.com. And it's an all-day event on a Saturday. I'd love a lot of, if anybody is interested, we have one in August in about 2 weeks. And then, and we'll just be going over tools, how to make relationships work. And then also Sound Engagement is our own podcast that we'd like to do. And then I don't do Twitter. I can't tweet. I don't know. That's about it.
You're good. I'm not a Twitter guy. I mean, I have a Twitter, but it's just hard to think like, do I really want to put my internal thoughts? No.
I know. Lord, yeah. I know. I remember when people were getting me into fantasy football like 15 years ago. And I'm like, no, because that's an addiction for me. I would just I could see myself like spending 30 hours a week on fantasy football. So I don't do it, so.
Cool. Y'all connect with Peter at his podcast. Listen to him. Connect with him on his website, AndersonFamTherapy.com. Amazing voice. Something that's needed will really help you flush out and get to the point and the value that you're looking for in your relationship. Peter, I thank you so much, guys. And until next time, thanks.
Thank you.